Okay, here we go. So these are examples for review number 2. I am not doing an example for every problem. The problems I am not doing an example for, you had examples for on review number 1. So I'm just going to concentrate on the stuff, the types of questions that were not on review number 1 that you did not have examples for. So the first one here is, what are the next 3 terms in the sequence? 2, 6, 18, and 54. So here's what you want to do. You want to check 1, do I get to the next term by adding or subtracting? Do I get from 2 to 6 by adding or subtracting? And then from 6 to 18, do I add or subtract the same thing each time? So to go from 2 to 6, I would add 4. If I add 4 again, am I going to get 18? No. So then, if that doesn't work, I try by multiplying or dividing by the same thing. How do I get from 2 to 6 by multiplying and dividing? I multiply times 3. If I take 6 times 3, do I get 18? Yes. If I take 18 times 3, do I get 54? Yes. So what do? I multiply by 3 each time. So I now take 54 times 3, and so my next number would be 162 because I do times 3. And then I multiply that times 3 to get 486. And then I do that times 3 to get 1,458. And those are my next 3 numbers. Okay, next problem. Simplify the rational expression. And we've done this before. You do it one step at a time. First thing I do is I look at just the numbers. I look at the 4 and the 8 and just the 4 and the 8. And 8 over 4 reduces. They're both divisible by 4, so divide them both by 4. And that gives me 2 over 1. Now, I have a 1 in my denominator. I don't need to worry about a 1 in my denominator. So I go ahead and erase that just to make life easier. Then I look next at my x's. And I go, all right, I have 3 and I have x by itself, which means I have x to the first power. So what do? I subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1. And I get 2. So my new exponent is x to the second power. Where does it go? Does it go in the numerator or does it go in the denominator? Well, where's the bigger power to start with? It's in the numerator. 3 is bigger than 1. So that means my x squared, because 3 minus 1 is 2, goes in my numerator. Now I do the same thing for my y's. I have 5 and 7. So I take 7 minus 5. Once again, I get 2. So I end up with y squared. Now where does it go? In the numerator or the denominator? 7 is bigger. It's in the denominator. The bigger exponent's the denominator. So that means my y squared goes in the denominator. Next slide, please. Okay, find the equation of the line passing through -1, 4 and parallel to the line y equals 2x plus 3. So parallel means that the slopes of the two lines are the same. So the slope of this line is 2. Remember, we're using the form y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope. So the slope of this line is 2, means the slope of my new line is also 2. And it passes through this x-coordinate and this y-coordinate. I have my slope that I need. I need to find my y-intercept. I use this slope and this x and y, and I plug them in here to find b. Y equals mx plus b. Y, which is 4, equals m, which is 2, times x, which is -1, plus b. I solve for b. 2 times -1, so I get 4 equals -2 plus b. Add 2 to both sides. 6 equals b. So now I have my b, I have my m, my new equation, y equals 2x plus 6. Okay. Next problem. Multiply 2x minus 5 times x plus 4. If I were to do this one, I would use FOIL. First terms. 2x times x gives me 2x squared. O for the outside terms or outer terms. 2x times 4, that gives me 8x. I for the inner terms, negative 5 times x gives me negative 5x. And L for the last terms, negative 5 times 4, negative 20, negative 20, negative 20. Get negative 20. These are my like terms in the middle. I have 2x squared. 8x minus 5x gives me 3x minus 20. And there's my answer. Next problem. Solve this system of equations. Okay, there's a handful of ways to solve a system of equations. The first way I could do it is I could graph them. I don't want to graph them. Graphing is no fun. Graphing is a pain in the butt. It's not accurate. I could also, and then so the next thing if I don't do graphing is I do elimination. So the first thing is if I add them, will something go away? 2 plus 3 is 5. Nope. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. Nope. I don't get zeros when I add either equation, so I need to multiply one or both. In this case, I have to multiply both equations. So I have 2 and 3. I can multiply the top one by negative 3, bottom one by 2. That works. But I also already have a positive here and a negative here. So I'm going to get rid of my y's. So I multiply the top equation by 4 and the bottom equation by 3. Do you see where the 4 and the 3 came from? The 4 and the 3. That's where they came from. Okay, so I use the x, the ones in front of the y's. I just flip them over. So 4 times everything in the top equation. 4 times 2x gives me 8x. 4 times 3y gives me 12y. 4 times 8 gives me 32. Same thing on the bottom, multiply everything times 3. 3 times 3 gives me 9x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Important to watch your negatives. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Add the two equations. 8 plus 9 is 17x. 12 and negative 12. Those cancel. That's why I did this. I eliminated my y's. 32 plus negative 15 is positive 17. Ooh, this is easy. Divide both sides by 17. X equals 1. So I need to ask you, x equals 1. Am I finished? No, you're right. I'm not finished. What do I need to do? I need to figure out my y. So I take this one and I plug it in for x in either equation. I'm going to use the top one. 2 times 1 plus 3y equals 8. 2 plus 3y equals 8. Subtract 2 from both sides. 3y equals 6. Divide by 3, and y equals 2. Okay. Next one, factor. Set up the big X. The number in the top, I multiply the two outside ones. 6 times negative 10 is negative 60. The bottom one is the number in the middle, negative 11. Two numbers that add to give me, multiply to give me 60, that add to give me negative 11. My choices are 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15. That looks promising. 5 and 12, and 6 and 10. Because both of these are negative, I want ones that where I subtract them, I get 11. 4 and 15, I subtract those, I get 11. I have 4, I have 15. This is negative, so that one's negative. Bigger number matches whatever's on the bottom. Now, I have to divide both sides by 6x because that's what I have. 6x, 6x. Reduce if you can. 4 over 6, does that reduce? Yes, it does. Gives me 2 over 3x. Does this one reduce? Yeah, 3 goes into both 15 and 6. So that gives me negative 5 over 2x. So this, and sorry, this, give me my factors. Bottom and front, top and back. Bottom and front, sorry, 3x plus 2, top and back. Same thing for the other one, 2x and minus 5, 2x minus 5. Okay, this is a little more difficult. A bag contains 4 red marbles, 3 yellow marbles, 5 blue marbles. You reach in and grab 2 marbles. What is the probability you grab 1 red marble and 1 blue marble? So here's how you do this. It's the probability that you grab a red one times the probability you grab a blue one. So what I need to know is what's my probability of a red one? Well, how many red marbles are there? There are 4 red marbles. How many of them are in the bag? Well, 4 plus 3 plus 5 gives me 12. So probability of a red one is 4 out of 12. Times, and this is where it gets a little bit more difficult, probability of blue one. Well, I have 5 blue marbles because I have 5 blue marbles, but I no longer have 12 marbles in the bag. I now have 11. Why? Because I pulled a red one out. I have 1 less marble in the bag. Now I need to multiply these. Okay, so you multiply your fractions. You can use a calculator or you can do it by hand. What I would do is I would reduce first. These are both divisible by 4, so I get 1 over 3. And then I multiply. 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 11 is 33. Okay, what is the slope of a line? Excuse me. Passes through the origin of the point, negative 5, 4. Formula for the slope of a line, y minus y, y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. And remember that the origin is the point 0, 0. This is my x, this is my y, and both the x and y in this one are 0. So I set up my equation. So I picked a point, so I have my point 4, negative 5, 4. My y is 4. My y in this one is 0. So I have 4 minus 0 over negative 5 minus 0, which is 4 over negative 5. That's my slope. Okay, Jimmy has scores of 82, 94, and 85 on 3 tests. What must he get on the next test to have a mean score of 88, i.e. an average score of 88? So what do you do to find the average? You take all the grades and add them together, 82 plus 94 plus 85 plus the one we're going to take, because that's what we're trying to figure out. Divide that by 4. And you should get 88. That means that's what our average is. 4 test scores. The 3 we have plus the new one. What am I going to need to get on the new one to get an average of 88? That's your setup. Add these numbers together, and you get 261 plus x over 4 equals 88. My next step, to get rid of the 4 in the denominator. So you multiply both sides by 4. This cancels. And you end up getting 261 plus x is equal to 88 times 4 is 352. Subtract 261 from both sides, and x equals 91. So he has to get 91 to get an average of 88. Okay, this is probably the hardest one that's in there. So I have a rectangle. The length is 3 more than twice its width. 3 more, that means I have plus 3 twice its width, which means I have 2w. So I have 2w plus 3 is the length, w is the width. And the area is 65. So what do I need to do? I need to multiply these two to get the area. How do you get the area? Multiply the length and width. So that means that w times 2w plus 3 is equal to 65. Multiply the w through, so distribute the w. So I get 2w squared plus 3w is equal to 65. And this is what we did the first week. The first 3 weeks, we were not together. So this one I'm going to take my time and walk it through. We have a quadratic equation we need to solve. Your first step is to set it equal to 0. It must be equal to 0 to solve. If you have a quadratic, i.e. something squared, it's not equal to 0, you cannot solve it. So what do I need to do? I subtract 65 from both sides. So I get 2w squared plus 3w minus 65 is equal to 0. Has to be equal to 0. The next thing I need to do is to factor it. So set up my big X to factor this. I have 2 times negative 65 is negative 130, and the bottom is 3. I need two numbers that separated by 3 that multiply to give me 130, 10 and 13. And there'll be a negative 10 and a positive 13. Think about it. Negative 10 times 13 gives you negative 130. Negative 10 plus 13 is 3. I have a 2w in front, so I divide them both by 2. This one reduces to negative 5. And actually, sorry, over 2x over x. So my factors are, should be a w, w minus 5, and 2w plus 13 is equal to 0. We did factoring before. Here's the new thing. First thing we did that was new was we set it equal to 0. Second thing that we did new was you had to factor. Here's what we're going to do now. To solve this, you take each factor and set it equal to 0 on its own. You factor it out, set each factor equal to 0, and then solve each factor. I add 5 to both sides. W equals 5. Subtract 13. 2w equals negative 13. Divide by 2. W equals negative 13 over 2. So these are my two answers, this one and this one. However, I'm talking about rectangles. If I weren't talking about rectangles, just solving that would be great. But I am talking about rectangles. So 5 would work. Put in 5 for w, it works. Negative 13 over w doesn't work because I gives me negative length. That's no bueno, no good, no negative lengths. So my answer is w equals 5. And here are my last two examples. How do you classify polynomials? You have one that asks you, it's a multiple choice question, which one of the following is a cubic binomial? There are two ways that we classify polynomials. One is by power or by degree. Remember, the degree is the largest exponent. A degree of 1 is a linear. So if I have x to the first power, I have a linear. Degree of 2, which means I would have an x squared, that would be a quadratic. And if I have x cubed, that would be a cubic. Okay, and then the next one is by the number of terms. If I have one term, it is a monomial. If I have two terms, it is a binomial. If I have three terms, it is a trinomial. Okay, that should help you with that question. And then the last one is graph the system of inequalities and figure graph the system of inequalities. So you're solving the system. The only way to solve a system of inequalities is by graphing. So we're going to look at just this first equation. If we cover up the y's, and we're just doing this first one here, we get 3x is equal to 6, divide by 3, x equals 2, that is our x-intercept. Cover up the x, we get the y, we get negative 2, y equals 6, divide by negative 2, and we get y is equal to negative 3. This is our x-intercept for the first one, 2. This is the y-intercept for the second one, negative 3. And our line, in this case, it's a solid line, it goes through. We put in 0 for x and 0 for y, and we test. Is 0 minus 0 less than 6? Is 0 less than 6? Yes, it is. So the origin works. So I shade above the line. Now I need to do the same thing for the second one. Negative 2x is equal to negative 6. Divide by negative 2. X equals 3. There's my x-intercept. And then I have 6y and negative 6. 6y equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 6. y equals -1. There's our y-intercepts of 3 and -1. And this one is a dashed line. Once again, if I put in 0 for x and 0 for y, I get 0 greater than -6. Yes, 0 is greater than -6. So it is shaded above. And my solution is, where do they overcross? Where do they cross over? Where are they shaded for both? And that is that.